this is Ogre Boy, and I'm going to be doing my top 10 worst comedy movies of the decade. This has not been the best decade for comedy movies. There's not been a lot that I've thought were really great, but I also don't think there's a lot that are absolutely horrible either, because most of the comedy movies that I have watched this year are ones that I just think were meh. They were just okay movies. Could be better, could be worse, and everything. I don't really go out of my way to see comedy movies that I don't think are going to look good. This list was kind of hard to do for me personally, because I know there's probably a lot worse comedy movies out there and everything, but these are just the ones that I could think of off the top of my head. So starting out at number 10 is The Dead Don't Die. And the reason this one is number 10 is because I actually do somewhat like this one. I was highly disappointed with it, though. I'm not gonna lie. I had high expectations for it and everything. But I thought Adam Driver and Bill Murray were both pretty good in here. Their deadpan humor worked pretty good. It was just the rest of the movie. I think the writing just was not very good and everything. It just wasn't, and it wasn't really the movie I was expecting either. That could be part of why I didn't enjoy this one as much. But I don't think it was an absolute garbage movie or anything. Like some of the movies that are on this list I think are just absolutely terrible. But this is definitely not one that I think is absolutely terrible, but I don't think it's like really great either. It's one that I was really disappointed with, and I was having trouble coming up with ones that I didn't like and everything, because like I said, most of the ones that I'm not crazy for this decade were more of ones that disappointed me than actually ones that I actually hated. There's only just a few on these lists that I actually think are extremely terrible and everything, and this one is just an alright movie. So but The Dead Don't Die is number 10, and number 9 is The Green Hornet. This movie was just, oh man, it has its moments and everything, but I was so disappointed with this movie. As someone who's a huge fan of Seth Rogen and everything, I gotta say, this is really the only movie of the decade, out of like his comedy movies and stuff, that I really didn't like. And everything. It's also probably going to end up on my worst superhero movies list too, which I'm planning on trying to do before too long. I just thought Seth Rogen was just not really that great. The guy that plays Kato I thought was pretty cool though, and the over-the-top performance by Christoph Waltz as the villain was really good and everything. There were things about it that I liked, but Cameron Diaz just totally phoned in her performance. I thought she was just absolutely terrible. She had no chemistry with Seth Rogen or any of the characters, and I just felt this movie fell flat. It just wasn't as good as it should have been or anything. So The Green Hornet is number 9, and number 8 is Killers, starring Ashton Kutcher and Katherine Heigl. This is a movie, when it first came out, I saw it and I somewhat enjoyed it. I thought it was a decent movie and everything. I just rewatched it a couple of weeks ago and I barely remember anything about it. The movie is so forgettable and everything. The only thing that I do really remember about this movie is that Katherine Heigl and Ashton Kutcher have no chemistry at all whatsoever, and the jokes and stuff don't land very well. It feels kind of like somewhat of a rip-off of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which I thought was a much better spy love story movie and everything, and this just could have been a lot better than it was and everything. It was predictable, and Catherine O'Hara and Tom Selleck both were really wasted in this movie. They were not very good in it either, and I think it's just really the writing and stuff. It just was really cliched and not very good movie. So Killers is number 8, and number 7 is How Do You Know? Now, this movie was one of the biggest disappointments for me, and I should have known going into this movie that I wasn't going to like it, because one of my friends had told me how bad it was and everything, but I was really hoping that I still would like it. I mean, you got James L. Brooks, who is a great writer and director, and a cast of people that I all like really well. Reese Witherspoon's my favorite actress, and she's in here, and Owen Wilson, Paul Rudd, and Jack Nicholson are all in here, and none of them really felt like they were really enjoying this movie. You could tell that they didn't really like it. Their performances just were not very good, and to be honest, I really don't even remember what this movie is about. I've only seen it once, and remember that it was just an absolutely terrible movie and everything. I don't know if I'll probably rewatch it eventually, but to see what I think of it on rewatch. But like I said, this movie's just terribly forgettable. To me, it was a waste of talent because everybody involved is so talented and everything. But this movie just did not work at all. And I know that Paul Rudd and Reese Witherspoon can work good together because they did the movie Overnight Delivery together, and they were really good in that together. And I'm sure that her and Owen Wilson would do good together in another movie, but it just was very disappointing. And I also hate that this is the last movie that Jack Nicholson has made. I really, really hope that he'll at least come out of his semi-retirement or whatever to do one more movie that makes up for this piece of garbage. But yeah, so How Do You Know is number 7, and number 6 is Death at a Funeral. I think this movie came out in 2010. I remember being excited to see this movie because it had a really good cast. Chris Rock, Zoe Saldana, Peter Dinklage, Danny Glover. I think that Tracy Lawrence might have been, or not Tracy Lawrence, maybe that was yeah, but I don't remember. There was a lot of good people in this movie and everything, and this was just a very disappointing movie. The jokes, for the most part, did not land. And there's a certain scene in this movie where Danny Glover's on the toilet and he craps all over somebody's hands because of something that's going on, and it's like very, very disgusting potty humor that about made me want to puke. It was very, very dumb. It was a terrible movie and everything. I haven't seen it in almost 10 years because I saw it when it was probably in 2011 when I saw this movie, so I don't remember too much about it except for that awfully nasty scene and everything, and that's easily why that scene alone puts it on this list. I haven't wanted to rewatch this movie because of that and everything, so it's number 6. And number 5 is Anchorman 2, The Legend Continues. This movie wasn't necessarily an absolute garbage movie or anything, but the reason it's so high up on this list is because of how disappointing it was. I remember the hype was huge on this movie. It was almost 10 years after the first one was released, and I was very, very excited for this movie because I'm a huge Will Ferrell fan, and I love the first Anchorman movie, so I was extremely excited. And I saw the movie, I was like, we've waited almost 10 years for this. It was just, to me, it was a huge, huge disappointment, and everything. The cast still worked good together and everything. It's just like the jokes and stuff were not funny and everything. So, and it just was, they used racial jokes and stuff too, which really annoyed me and stuff. Like, why does Will Ferrell get away with having some of the most racist jokes in this movie when he's with this black girl and making all kinds of racist jokes with her family and stuff? People don't complain about that, but they complain about other stuff. I guess this was really before the political correctness stuff really started in this decade and everything, but I think the racist jokes are just really jacked up and everything. It's just not really that funny to me. The jokes don't land, and the only thing about this movie that I can say that I did like was the epic big fight scene at the end where all the different news studios were fighting each other and stuff, kind of like they had in the first movie, and you got all kinds of epic cameos from Will Smith, Jim Carrey, and so many other people. That was really about the only thing about this movie that I can say I really loved. And it was also cool having cameos from Harrison Ford and James Marsden But really, besides that, Anchorman 2 was just a huge disappointment for me. So it's number 5. And number 4 is Blockers. This movie stars John Cena and Leslie Mann, and I can't remember who the other guy's name, but he was in Neighbors and Suicide Squad. And they're trying to cock block their daughters from having sex on prom night. And I think this movie was okay and everything. They tried to add too much of the political stuff into this movie, and it just the agendas and stuff that they were throwing in this movie, to me, ruined it and everything. There was some pretty funny jokes though and everything, but in the end I was just really disappointed with this movie. It looked like it was going to be absolutely hilarious and a unique take on the sex comedies and stuff, with the girls wanting to have the sex instead of the guys and stuff, and it just didn't work for me. I think Booksmart did everything that this movie tried to do 100% better and everything. This one just was not that great to me, and like I said, it was a huge disappointment. It was one that I loved the trailers and stuff. Like, it looked like a legitimately funny movie, and it did have its moments, but in the end I just didn't really enjoy Blockers. I thought it was a pretty bad movie. So it's number 4. And number 3 is Grownups 2. As I've said before in other lists and other videos, that I really did enjoy the first Grownups movie a lot. I thought it was a pretty hilarious buddy comedy that wasn't anything special, but it was just fun watching all these actors who have great chemistry together, and obviously having fun doing this movie that, like I said, it wasn't anything special and everything. And this movie wasn't meant to be anything special either, but the execution of it was just absolutely terrible. It's easily one of the worst movies of the 2010s, and it'll probably end up on that list as well. I was so disappointed in this movie, and I had no reason to be, because I shouldn't have had myself so hyped up and everything. I should have known with Rob Schneider not coming back that I wouldn't enjoy it as much, seeing he was one of the reasons I enjoyed the first one so much. I really liked his character and everything, and them adding Nick Swardson, who I'm not really a big fan of as far as his movies go. I think he's an okay stand-up comedian, but I just don't really like him as an actor and everything. Adding him into this movie I thought sucked, and there was not really anything about this movie that I really liked, except for maybe the cool costumes and stuff during their 80s party at the end of the movie. The opening scene where the deer is in the house and it pees all over Adam Sandler's kid and stuff is just really ridiculous and stupid, and the deer looks super fake and everything. Some terrible CGI, and then like the scenes where they're getting bullied by college kids. It's like, really, this crap was funny when it was in Step Brothers, when little kids were bullying them and everything, but they were outnumbered. That there were at least a good 4 or 5 adults in this movie that could have gone up against those college kids, and it wouldn't have been a problem and everything. They could have fought them off and stuff. This just was a very terrible movie and everything. So Grownups 2 is number 3, and number 2 is Ghostbusters from 2016, also known as Ghostbusters Answer the Call. A call that should have never have been answered, if you ask me. This movie was just, God, it was awful. I went in here hoping to be wrong. I was hoping that I could enjoy this movie, but man, it was just absolutely terrible. The cast tried the best that they could, and you could tell that they got along and everything, and they worked really good together. It's just the rest of the movie was terrible. It's not anything to do with the fact that it was women actors being Ghostbusters and stuff. That part didn't really bother me. What bothered me was just the way the movie was. It was very poorly written. The jokes were very unfunny. The cameos by the original Ghostbusters cast were not very good, and Bill Murray felt like a really big insult and everything because he had supposedly been the reason why we never got a proper Ghostbusters 3 and everything, but he was willing to do this crap and everything. Thank God they're giving us Ghostbusters Afterlife, which totally ignores this piece of crap and everything, but it just was a terrible movie. So Ghostbusters 2016 is number 2, and my number 1 worst comedy movie of the decade is Thanksgiving 3. I watched this movie the other night, and I should have listened to Derek from Derek's Horror Corner, because he warned me that this movie was terrible and everything, and I went in with little hopes that I might at least somewhat enjoy it more and everything, because sometimes I enjoy stuff more than he does and everything, and especially stuff like this I tend to enjoy more than most people do. But man, Thanksgiving 3 was just absolute garbage. It's easily one of the worst movies of the decade, and knocked Ghostbusters out of the number 1 spot. For so many years I had Ghostbusters as the worst movie of the decade until I watched Thanksgiving 3 the other night. And it was just absolutely terrible movie. And what sucks is, like, all of the people who worked on the original one came back for it. I mean, like, as far as writers and stuff go and everything, there was no reason this movie should have been as bad as it was and everything. And the guy who took over doing the voice of Turkey sucked and everything, and none of the jokes landed. It just was one of the most unfunny and really stupid movies I've seen throughout this whole decade and everything, and it'll be pretty high up on my worst movies of the 2010s whenever I do that and everything. So, but yeah, so Thanksgiving 3 is my number 1 worst comedy movie of the decade. Let me know in the comments what your worst comedy movie of the decade is, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and have a good day, everybody.
This is the song that doesn't end. Yes, it goes on and on, my friend.
That's enough, guys.
Some people started singing it, not knowing what it was, and they'll continue singing it forever just because this is the song that doesn't end.
How do I turn you on?